The Veiled had watched the galaxy for 12,000 years. They lived in a place that was not quite real, a dimension that existed beside normal space like a shadow beside a wall. From this hidden realm they could see everything. Every planet, every star, every living thing that crawled or walked or flew across a million worlds, but nothing could see them back. They believed this with absolute certainty. Their technology was ancient and perfect. Their phase shields bent light and gravity around them like water around a stone. For 12,000 years, they had observed over 2,000 civilizations rise and fall. They had watched species discover fire, build cities, create weapons, and destroy themselves. The Veiled recorded everything and touched nothing. They thought they were gods. Elder Rin sat in the great observation chamber, watching the feeds from 1,000 different worlds. Rin was old even by Veiled standards, and had seen more species fail than most could count. There was a pattern to it all. Young species grew quickly, reached for the stars, found only emptiness, and collapsed under the weight of their own ambition. The universe was too big. The distances were too great. And always, species turned their weapons on themselves before they could become a true threat. The Veiled had learned long ago that intervention was unnecessary. The galaxy cleaned itself. But lately, something had been bothering Rin. A species on a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. Humans, they called themselves. The Veiled had only been watching them for 300 years, barely a moment in cosmic time. Yet in those 3 centuries, these strange creatures had gone from wooden ships to metal ones that sailed between worlds. They were fast, too fast, and they asked too many questions. Far across the galaxy, the research vessel Horizon drifted through the darkness near the Kepler 442 system. It was not a military ship. It carried no great weapons. Its crew of 47 scientists and support staff had spent the last 3 years mapping anomalies in deep space, looking for anything unusual. They had found something. Dr. Yuna stared at her screen with tired eyes. She had been looking at the same readings for 6 hours, convinced she was making a mistake. But the numbers did not change. There was something wrong with space itself in this region. A gravity signature that appeared and disappeared like a heartbeat. A ripple in the fabric of reality that should not exist. She walked to the bridge, where Captain Tiho was reviewing the day's reports. He was a calm man with gray at his temples and the kind of steady presence that made people trust him. When Yuna showed him the readings, his expression did not change. "You are certain?" he asked. "I have checked 7 times," Yuna said. "There is a dimensional fold in this region. Something is hiding here, something big." Tiho looked at the main view screen, which showed nothing but empty space and distant stars. But he had learned long ago to trust his scientists more than his eyes. "Show me." Lieutenant Yi adjusted their course while Engineer Subin calibrated the sensors for maximum sensitivity. The Horizon moved slowly toward the coordinates Yuna had identified, its systems humming with quiet power. Every crew member felt the tension. They had all signed up to explore the unknown, but this felt different. This felt like the unknown was exploring them back. The first sign was a shimmer, just a flicker at the edge of visibility, like heat rising from summer pavement. Then the sensors went wild. "There," Subin said, pointing at her display. "The dimensional boundary, it is real. There is another layer of space folded over our own." Tiho leaned forward. "Can you see what is on the other side?" Subin worked her console with flying fingers. She was young but brilliant, the kind of engineer who saw machines as puzzles waiting to be solved. After several minutes, she shook her head. "Not directly, but I can detect energy signatures, power sources, structures." She paused, her face pale. "Sir, there is something there, something artificial, something alive." In the hidden dimension, alarms were sounding for the first time in 3,000 years. Observer Tal had been assigned to watch the human vessel. It was routine work. Humans were interesting but primitive, their ships slow and their sensors weak. Tal had expected to observe them for a few hours before they moved on, never knowing they had passed within sight of the greatest secret in the galaxy. But the humans had not moved on. They had stopped. They had pointed their crude instruments directly at the dimensional boundary, and somehow, impossibly, they had seen something. "This cannot be happening," Tal whispered. "This has never happened." The message reached Elder Rin within minutes. The ancient leader read the report 3 times, convinced it was an error. No species had ever detected the Veiled. Their technology was 12,000 years beyond anything else in the galaxy. The phase shields were perfect. Yet here was a human ship, its sensors locked onto the dimensional fold, and its crew clearly aware that something was hidden there. "How," Rin demanded, "how did they find us?" Keeper Nell, the oldest of the archivists, searched the historical records. There was no precedent. In all of recorded history, across all observed civilizations, not a single species had ever pierced the veil. The math simply did not work. Human technology was too primitive. Their understanding of physics was too limited. "Perhaps it was an accident," Nell suggested. "Perhaps they do not truly understand what they have found." But on the horizon, understanding was growing by the minute. Dr. Yuna had gathered her team in the main laboratory. The readings were spread across every screen, analyzed from every angle. What they had found was not natural. It was not a random fold in space. It was engineered. Someone had built a hiding place in the fabric of reality itself. "Whoever made this," Yuna said slowly, "has been watching the galaxy for a very long time, and they did not want to be found." Sergeant Wu Jin, head of the ship's small security team, stood in the corner with his arms crossed. He was a practical man who preferred problems he could shoot. This was not one of them. "So what do we do?" he asked. Ti-Ho looked at the view screen, at the empty space that was not really empty at all. He thought about all the years humanity had spent looking at the stars, wondering if they were alone, hopping and fearing the answer in equal measure. "We say hello," he said. Su Bin worked through the night building something new. If the beings on the other side used dimensional phase technology, then communication would require matching that frequency. It was like tuning a radio to an impossible station. She failed 17 times. The 18th time she succeeded. A pulse of energy shot from the horizon and vanished into the dimensional fold. It carried a simple message, the first words humanity had ever spoken to an alien intelligence. "We see you. We come in peace. Please respond." In the observation chamber, Elder Rin watched the message arrive. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Veiled were no longer hidden. A species younger than their oldest monuments had looked into the shadows and found them there. Rin did not know whether to feel anger or fear, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same. The Watchers had been watched, and humanity was just getting started. The message sat in the Veiled communication system like a bomb waiting to explode. Simple words from a simple species, and yet they had shattered 12,000 years of perfect secrecy. Elder Rin stared at the text, reading it again and again as if the meaning might change. "We see you. We come in peace. Please respond." How dare they? How dare these young creatures, these beings who had only discovered electricity a few heartbeats ago in cosmic time, speak to the Veiled as if they were equals? Rin felt something unfamiliar rising in the ancient mind. It took a moment to recognize the emotion. Fear. The emergency council gathered in the great chamber. 12 elders, the most powerful beings in the hidden dimension, sat in a circle of floating light. Observer Tal stood in the center, trembling under their combined attention. "Explain," Commander Orin demanded. Orin was the military leader of the Veiled, a being who had spent millennia preparing for wars that never came. "You were assigned to watch these humans. How did this happen?" Tal struggled to find words. "I do not know. Their technology is primitive. Their sensors should not be able to detect our phase shields. It is like a blind creature suddenly seeing in the dark. Then they had help, Oren said. Another species must have given them this ability. Keeper Nell shook an ancient head. Impossible. We would have seen such contact. We see everything. Clearly we do not see everything, Rin said quietly, and the chamber fell silent. When the eldest elder spoke, all listened. We have watched this species for 3 centuries. Tell me, Tal, what have you learned? Tal took a moment to organize thoughts that had never needed organizing before. Humans were supposed to be simple. Watching them was supposed to be boring. But the more Tal had observed, the more unsettling they had become. They are different, Tal began. Other species we have watched, they accept their limits. When they hit a wall, they stop. When they are told something is impossible, they believe it. But humans do not work this way. Explain. They break things to understand them. They question everything, even things that everyone agrees are true. They have a word for it. They call it science. But it is more than that. It is a kind of madness. They see a wall and they do not stop. They find ways around it, through it, over it. They refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. The elders exchanged glances. This was not the report they had expected. And there is something else, Tal continued. They share information, constantly, obsessively. When one human learns something, they tell others. They build on each other's work. Their progress is not linear, it multiplies. Commander Oren waved a tendril of light dismissively. They are still primitive. We have weapons that could destroy their entire fleet in moments. I say we eliminate this ship before they can spread what they have learned. Strike quickly, strike hard, and the problem disappears. But even as Oren spoke, the problem was already spreading. On the horizon, Engineer Subin had not slept in 36 hours. She had coffee stains on her uniform and wild excitement in her eyes. The dimensional fold was the most beautiful puzzle she had ever seen, and she was determined to solve it. I can build a detector, she told Captain T-Ho. If I can map the exact frequency of their phase shields, we can see through them. Not just here, everywhere. T-Ho nodded slowly. How long? Give me a day. Dr. Yuna was equally busy. Her team had analyzed every scrap of data from the initial detection, looking for patterns. What they found was disturbing. The dimensional boundary was not just in this region. It was everywhere. Tiny traces, almost invisible, spread across every sector of space they had ever explored. They have been watching us, Yuna said. Not just for 3 centuries. They have been watching everything, every species, every planet. They have seen the entire history of the galaxy. Lieutenant Yi looked up from her tactical display. If they have been hiding this long, they must have a reason. And if they have been watching everything, they must have power we cannot imagine. Which is why we need allies, T-Ho said. He turned to the communications officer. Send a message. All channels. Maximum encryption. Every human colony, research station, and military outpost in range. Tell them what we have found. Tell them we are not alone, and tell them to start looking. The message went out at the speed of light. Within hours, it had reached a dozen worlds. Within days, it would reach hundreds. The secret of the Veiled was no longer a secret. In the hidden dimension, Commander Oren received reports of the transmission with growing rage. They are telling everyone, Oren snarled. We must act now, destroy the ship, destroy the colonies that received the message. We can contain this. Elder Rin remained calm, but inside the ancient mind was racing. Oren's solution was simple and brutal. It might even work, but something about it felt wrong. The Veiled had survived for 12,000 years by staying hidden, by never engaging, by letting the galaxy burn itself out while they watched from safety. But this species did not burn itself out. It grew, it learned, it adapted, and now it was looking back. Wait, Rin said. Let us see what they do next. What they did next was remarkable. Subin finished her detector in 18 hours instead of 24. When she activated it, the horizon screens lit up with data that made the entire crew gasp. The dimensional boundary was not just visible now. It was mapped. Every fold, every ripple, every hidden pocket of the veiled dimension was suddenly exposed. "There are thousands of them," Subin whispered. "Stations, ships, observation posts, they are everywhere." Yuna leaned over her shoulder, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. "They have been watching the entire galaxy, every species that ever existed. They saw it all." "And they did nothing," Yi said quietly. "All those civilizations that rose and fell, all that suffering and death, they just watched." The realization settled over the crew like a cold weight. The Veiled were not gods. They were observers, recorders. They had watched species destroy themselves and never lifted a finger to help. The question was, why? T-Ho made a decision. If these beings would not respond to their first message, perhaps they would respond to something more direct. "Subin, can you send a data pulse through the dimensional boundary?" The engineer nodded. "I think so. Why?" "Because I want to show them something." The pulse that entered the veiled dimension contained more than words. It contained a complete record of humanity's progress over the last 300 years, their struggles and triumphs, their wars and their peace, their failures and their refusal to give up. And at the end, a simple statement. "We know you are there. We know you have been watching. We have told everyone what we found. If you want to talk, we are listening. If you want to fight, we are ready. But know this, we will not be ignored. We will not be forgotten. We are humanity, and we always find a way." Elder Rin read the message in stunned silence. No species had ever spoken to the Veiled this way. No species had ever dared. Commander Orin wanted war. Keeper Nell wanted retreat. The council was divided for the first time in millennia. But Rin was thinking about something Tal had said. Humans refused to accept that anything was impossible. They broke walls instead of stopping at them. They shared everything they learned. Perhaps, Rin thought, it was time to stop watching. Perhaps it was time to meet these impossible creatures face to face. "Prepare a delegation," Rin ordered. "We are going to talk to the humans." Orin protested. Nell warned of dangers, but the decision was made. After 12,000 years of hiding, the Veiled were about to step into the light. On the horizon, the crew waited for a response. They did not know if they would receive friendship or destruction, but they were not afraid. They were human, and they had already done the impossible once today. The meeting place existed between worlds. It was a station built in the thin space where the veiled dimension touched normal reality, a place that belonged to neither side and both. The Veiled had constructed it in 3 days, using technology that humans could barely understand. It hung in the void like a crystal flower, beautiful and cold and ancient. The human shuttle approached slowly. Inside, 5 people sat in silence, each preparing in their own way for the moment that would change history. Captain T-Ho reviewed his notes for the 100th time. He had spoken with diplomats, military leaders, and scientists from across human space. Everyone had advice. Everyone had warnings. In the end, he had decided to trust his instincts. Dr. Yuna clutched a data pad containing everything humanity knew about the Veiled, which was almost nothing. She was terrified and thrilled in equal measure. This was what she had dreamed of her entire life. First contact, proof that the universe was full of wonders. Lieutenant Yi had a small weapon hidden in her boot. She did not expect to use it. Against beings who could fold space itself, a gun was about as useful as a sharp stick. But it made her feel better. Engineer Subin was already thinking about the station, wondering how it worked, imagining the technology that had built it. She wanted to take it apart and understand every piece. Sergeant Wu Jin sat perfectly still, watching everything. His job was to protect the others. Against these aliens he was not sure how, but he would find a way or die trying. The shuttle docked with a soft click, the airlock opened, and humanity stepped into the unknown. The veiled delegation was waiting for them. Elder Rin had chosen the appearance carefully. The veiled could take many forms, and for thousands of years they had preferred shapes that inspired fear and awe. Massive beings of shifting light, geometries that hurt to look at, voices that echoed like thunder. But watching the humans approach, Rin began to doubt this choice. The 5 humans walked into the chamber with their heads held high. They looked at the impossible shapes of the veiled delegation, and they did not fall to their knees. They did not tremble. They did not worship. They stared back with open curiosity, as if they were studying interesting insects. "I am Elder Rin," the Ancient One said, voice rolling through the chamber. "We are the Veiled. We have watched this galaxy for 12,000 years. You are the first species to ever find us. Speak and explain how this was done." Ti-Ho stepped forward. He was not a large man. He did not have an impressive voice. But when he spoke, there was steel in his words. "I am Captain Ti-Ho of the human vessel Horizon. We found you because we were looking. We are always looking. That is what humans do." Rin was not satisfied. "Your technology is primitive. Your species is young. The math does not work. How did you see through shields that have hidden us for millennia?" Dr. Yuna answered before Ti-Ho could speak. She was too excited to stay quiet. "Your shields are based on phase shifting, yes. You move slightly out of sync with normal space, making yourselves invisible to conventional sensors." The Veiled stirred. This human understood their technology. That should not be possible. Yuna continued, her voice growing stronger. "But phase shifting creates gravitational anomalies, tiny ripples in spacetime. Most species would never notice them, but we have been mapping gravitational waves for decades. We found your ripples, and once we knew what to look for, the rest was just engineering." Su Bin nodded eagerly. "Your shields are very good, but nothing is perfect. There is always a trace, always a footprint. You just need to know where to look." Commander Oren stepped forward, a massive shape of dark energy and sharp angles. "You speak as if you are our equals. You are not. We have power beyond your imagination. We could destroy your entire species in moments." Wu Jin moved slightly, putting himself between Oren and the others. It was a useless gesture against such power, but he made it anyway. Lieutenant Yi spoke for the first time, her voice calm and cold. "You could try, but we have already sent everything we know to every human world. If you destroy us, others will come. If you destroy them, more will follow. Humans are like water. We fill every space. We go around every obstacle. You cannot stop us by killing us. You can only make us angry." The chamber fell silent. The Veiled had never heard such words from a lesser species. They did not know how to respond. Elder Rin studied the 5 humans with new eyes. There was no fear in them. Not really. There was caution, yes, and awareness of danger. But underneath that was something the Veiled had never encountered before. Absolute refusal to submit. "You have watched us for 300 years, Ti-Ho said. What have you seen?" Rin considered the question. "We have seen your wars, your cruelty, your stupidity. You kill each other over resources, over beliefs, over nothing at all. You poison your own worlds. You create weapons capable of destroying yourselves and then argue about who should control them." "And yet we are still here," Ti-Ho said. "Still growing, still reaching for the stars." "Yes," Rin admitted. "That is unexpected." Keeper Nell spoke from the back of the Veiled delegation. "We have watched over 2,000 species. Most destroy themselves before they spread beyond their homeworld. The few that achieve interstellar travel eventually collapse under their own weight. The pattern is always the same." "But we are different," Yuna said. It was not a question. "You are different," Nell agreed. "You should have destroyed yourselves many times. You had the weapons, the hatred, the stupidity. But somehow you always stepped back from the edge. Somehow you always chose survival. We do not understand why." Su Bin laughed. The sound was strange in that ancient chamber. Because we are too stubborn to die and too curious to give up. Why would we destroy ourselves when there is so much left to discover? Orin made a sound that might have been disgust. You speak of discovery as if it matters. We have discovered everything. We have mapped every star, cataloged every species, recorded every moment of history. There is nothing left to find. The humans exchanged glances. Something passed between them. A shared understanding that the Veiled, for all their power and age, had missed something important. With respect, Tiho said carefully, that is the saddest thing I have ever heard. Rin's form flickered. Explain. You have been watching for 12,000 years. Watching, not doing. You have all this power, all this knowledge, and you have used it for nothing. You are ghosts, shadows. You exist, but you do not live. The words hung in the air like a challenge. We have preserved ourselves, Rin said. We have survived. Is that enough? Yuna asked. To just survive, to just watch while the universe happens around you. We have only been a species for a few 100,000 years. We have only been in space for a few centuries. But in that time we have created music and art and stories. We have loved and lost and tried again. We have failed and learned and grown. Can you say the same? The Veiled had no answer. They had never been asked such questions. They had never needed to justify their existence to anyone. Lieutenant Yi pressed the advantage. You thought you were gods, hidden above everything, watching the lesser beings struggle and die, but gods create, gods build, gods give meaning to the universe. All you have done is take notes. And you, Orin demanded, what have you built that matters? Wu Jin stepped forward. He had been silent, watching, protecting. Now he spoke with the simple honesty of a soldier. We built hope, he said. Every generation looks at the stars and dreams of something better. Every child is told that they can change the world. We fail more than we succeed. We hurt each other more than we should. But we never stop trying. We never stop believing that tomorrow can be better than today. The meeting continued for hours. Arguments were made and rejected. Threats were offered and ignored. But slowly something began to change. The Veiled had expected to intimidate these humans, to remind them of their place in the universe, to send them away with warnings and fear. Instead, they found themselves facing mirrors, creatures who looked at ancient power and saw only stagnation, beings who refused to be impressed by age and technology, a species that valued progress over preservation, hope over safety, and curiosity over certainty. When the meeting ended, no agreements had been made, but Elder Rin watched the human shuttle depart with something new stirring in that ancient mind. Perhaps 12,000 years of watching had been enough. Perhaps it was time to see what living felt like. The peace after the first meeting lasted exactly 47 days. Then Commander Orin decided to teach humanity a lesson. The attack came without warning. 3 veiled warships materialized from the dimensional fold above Research Station Echo 7, a small human outpost at the edge of explored space. The station had 200 scientists, engineers, and support staff. It had no weapons. It was not a military target. Orin chose it precisely because it was helpless. The phase weapons tore through the station's shields in seconds. The hull breached in 17 places. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, but it was not enough. In less than 3 minutes, 43 humans were dead. The rest were left floating in damaged sections, gasping for air that was rapidly running out. Then the veiled ships vanished back into their dimension, leaving only wreckage behind. Orin reported to the council with satisfaction. The message is clear. We can strike anywhere at any time. They cannot stop us. They cannot fight back. This war is already over. Elder Rin listened in silence. Something felt wrong. The attack had been too easy. The humans had been too surprised. It did not match what Rin had seen in that meeting chamber. Those 5 humans had not been afraid. They had spoken of hope and progress and never giving up. What would such a species do when their people were killed? The answer came 6 days later. Subin had not slept since the attack. Neither had most of the human scientific community. Echo 7 had been their colleagues, their friends. The anger was immense, but it was cold. It was focused, and it was productive. The phase detector technology had been shared across all human worlds within hours of its invention. Now, thousands of scientists were working on the same problem: how to fight back against enemies who could hide in another dimension. Subin found the solution on day 4. It was elegant in its simplicity. The veiled phase shields worked by shifting their ships slightly out of sync with normal space, but that shift required enormous energy, and energy could be disrupted. She called it the phase disruptor, a weapon that did not destroy veiled ships. It simply forced them back into normal space where they could be seen, where they could be hit. Captain Tiho, now Admiral Tiho after a rapid promotion, received the specifications with grim satisfaction. How long to build them? We already have, Subin said. 47 units deployed to research vessels across the border sectors. The Veiled do not know. They think we are still helpless. The first counterattack happened 3 days later. A veiled observation post near the Kepler system had been watching human activity for centuries. It was hidden in the dimensional fold, completely invisible to conventional sensors. Its crew of 12 had never felt anything but safe. The phase disruptor pulse hit them without warning. One moment they were hidden. The next, they were exposed, their shields failing, their ship suddenly visible to the human vessels that had been quietly surrounding them. The veiled crew sent a distress signal. Help never came in time. When Orin received the report, the commander refused to believe it. Impossible. They cannot have developed countermeasures so quickly. It took us centuries to perfect phase technology. They did not perfect it, Keeper Nell said quietly. They broke it. They found the weakness and exploited it. That is what they do. Over the next month, 7 more veiled outposts were destroyed. Not by massive fleets, not by overwhelming force, by small ships with clever weapons, appearing where they were not expected, striking before the veiled could respond. The humans were learning, adapting, growing stronger with every battle. Elder Rin called an emergency council. The chamber was tense, filled with fear and confusion. The Veiled had not fought a real war in 8,000 years. They had forgotten what it meant to face an enemy that could fight back. How are they doing this? Rin demanded. Explain. Observer Tal stepped forward, still trembling but now with something like admiration in those ancient eyes. They share everything. Every piece of data from every battle is instantly transmitted to every human world. Every scientist can see what worked and what failed. Every engineer can improve on what came before. So do we, Orin protested. Our knowledge is preserved in the great archives. Preserved, yes, Tal said, but not shared, not freely. Among humans, a young engineer on a distant colony can have an idea in the morning and have it tested by midday. They do not wait for approval from elders. They do not follow proper channels. They just do. Nell nodded slowly. They are chaotic, disorganized, messy, but they are also fast, faster than we have ever seen. In the time it takes us to form a committee, they have already tried 17 different solutions. Rin understood now. The Veiled were ancient and powerful. Their technology was superior in every measurable way, but their society was rigid, hierarchical, slow to change. Humans were the opposite. They were young and weak and often foolish, but they could adapt in real time. They could throw away ideas that did not work and embrace new ones without hesitation. They were not bound by tradition or authority. They were unpredictable. The war continued for months. The Veiled won many battles. Their technology was still superior, their weapons still devastating. But every victory cost them more than they expected. Every attack taught humans new lessons. Every fallen outpost revealed new weaknesses. Dr. Yuna led a team that analyzed captured veiled technology. Within weeks, they had reverse-engineered the phase communication system, allowing human ships to intercept veiled messages. Within months, they had developed shields that could partially resist phase weapons. Lieutenant Yi became a legend. She commanded a small fleet of fast ships that struck veiled positions and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Her tactics were unconventional, sometimes bizarre. She used asteroids as weapons. She hid ships inside gas giants. She once convinced a veiled commander that a decoy fleet was real by broadcasting fake life signs and radio chatter. Sergeant Wu Jin trained a new generation of soldiers. They were not the biggest or the strongest, but they were clever and determined and utterly unwilling to give up. They learned to fight in zero gravity, in toxic atmospheres, in the dimensional fold itself. Admiral Tiho coordinated the overall war effort with calm precision. He made mistakes. He lost ships and people, but he learned from every failure and shared those lessons with everyone. Orin grew desperate. The commander who had been so confident now watched helplessly as the war slipped away. "They should not be able to do this," Orin said at another emergency council. "They are children. They have been in space for less than 400 years. We have had 8,000 years to prepare for war." "We prepared for war against species like ourselves," Rin said. "Ancient, cautious, bound by tradition. Humans are none of those things." "Then what do we do?" Nell spoke into the silence. "We do something we have never done in 12,000 years. We admit that we were wrong. We find a way to end this war before they grow strong enough to end us." Orin raged. Pride demanded that the Veiled fight until victory or destruction, but Rin saw the truth in Nell's words. The humans were getting stronger every day. Their technology was improving at an impossible rate. Their determination showed no signs of fatting. If this war continued, the Veiled would eventually lose, not because they were weak, but because they could not change and humans could not stop changing. "Send a message," Rin said finally. "Tell them we wish to talk." The response came within hours. Admiral Tiho's voice, calm and steady as always. "We are listening." Rin felt something strange. Relief, perhaps, or maybe hope. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Veiled were going to do something new. They were going to admit that someone else might have the right answer. The treaty negotiations lasted 3 months. They were held on a neutral world, a dead planet where nothing had lived for 1 billion years. Neither side trusted the other enough to meet anywhere else. Admiral Tiho led the human delegation. He had gray in his hair now, lines on his face that had not been there 3 years ago. The war had aged him, but his eyes were still sharp, his mind still clear. He knew what humanity needed from this peace. Elder Rin led the Veiled delegation. The ancient being had changed as well. There was less certainty in Rin's form, less absolute confidence. The war had taught lessons that 12,000 years of observation never could. For the first week, they argued about the past, who had started the war, who had committed the worst crimes, how many had died on each side. The numbers were horrifying. Over 300,000 humans, nearly 18,000 Veiled. For a species that had not lost a single member to violence in millennia, it was devastating. But arguing about the past solved nothing. Eventually, they had to talk about the future. Dr. Yuna presented the human proposal. She had spent months preparing it, consulting with scientists and diplomats and ordinary citizens across human space. What she offered was unprecedented. "Full technological exchange," she said. "Everything we have learned, everything you have learned, shared freely without restriction." The Veiled delegation stirred with confusion and suspicion. In their society, knowledge was power. Knowledge was control. Giving it away meant giving away everything. "Why would you offer this?" Commander Orin demanded. Oren was still bitter, still angry, but had learned enough to listen. You could keep your discoveries secret, build weapons we cannot counter, eventually destroy us completely. Tiho answered, because that is not who we want to be. We did not reach for the stars to become conquerors. We came looking for friends. You fought us, Oren said. You killed thousands of our people. After you killed ours, Lieutenant Yi said sharply. She stood at Tiho's side, still the warrior she had always been. We defended ourselves. We fought back, but we never wanted this war. We never wanted any war. Keeper Nell leaned forward, ancient eyes studying the humans with new understanding. And if we accept your offer, what do you expect in return? Partnership, Yuna said simply. You have watched the galaxy for 12,000 years. You have seen everything, recorded everything, understood things we cannot imagine. Share that knowledge with us. Help us explore. Help us grow. And in return, Subin spoke up. She had aged too, but her eyes still sparkled with the same curiosity that had driven her to solve the impossible. In return, we help you change. You have been hiding for so long that you have forgotten how to live. We can remind you. We can show you what it means to dream, to hope, to build something new. The veiled delegation was silent. This was not what they had expected. They had come prepared for demands, for threats, for the harsh terms of victory. Instead, they faced something far more unsettling. An offer of friendship. Elder Rin thought about 12,000 years of watching. All those civilizations rising and falling, all that potential wasted. The Veiled had told themselves that non-interference was wisdom, that staying hidden was safety, that watching was enough. But it was not enough. It had never been enough. Deep down, Rin had known this for millennia. The hiding had become a prison. The observation had become an excuse. The Veiled had stopped living and started merely existing. These humans offered something different, a chance to matter, a chance to participate in the universe instead of just recording it. We accept, Rin said. Oren protested. Other elders objected, but the decision was made. For the first time since the founding of their civilization, the Veiled were going to step out of the shadows and join the galaxy they had watched for so long. The treaty was signed on a beautiful morning, with the light of a distant sun casting long shadows across the dead world. Two species that had been enemies became partners. Two civilizations that had misunderstood each other began the long process of learning. The changes came slowly at first. Veiled scientists worked alongside human researchers, combining ancient knowledge with young creativity. Human explorers traveled through the dimensional fold, seeing parts of the universe that had been hidden for millennia. Together, they mapped regions of space that neither could have reached alone. Engineer Subin led the first joint engineering project, a new type of ship that combined veiled phase technology with human adaptability. It could travel between dimensions, hide when needed and fight when necessary. But more importantly, it could explore. It could reach stars that had never been visited, planets that had never been touched. Dr. Yuna established the first joint research institute. Human and veiled scientists working side by side, sharing discoveries freely, building on each other's work. Within a year, they had made breakthroughs that would have taken centuries alone. Within a decade, they had begun to unravel secrets of the universe that neither species had imagined. Sergeant Wujin trained mixed security teams, humans and veiled learning to trust each other, to fight together, to protect each other. It was difficult at first. Old hatreds died hard, but slowly respect grew, then friendship, then something like family. Lieutenant Yi became an ambassador. She traveled between human and veiled worlds, solving disputes, building connections, showing both species what was possible when they worked together instead of apart. She was still sharp, still fierce, but now her strength was used for building instead of destroying. Admiral Tiho retired after 5 years. He had done what he set out to do. He had led humanity through its greatest crisis and emerged with something better than survival. He had found a future worth believing in. But he often visited the observation deck of the new Joint Space Station, watching the stars with Elder Rin by his side. "Do you ever regret it?" Tiho asked one night. 12,000 years of hiding ended because of us." Rin's form flickered with something that might have been amusement. "I regret the years we wasted, the civilizations we watched destroy themselves when we might have helped, the fear that kept us trapped in our own shadows. And now I feel something I have not felt in millennia: purpose, direction, hope." Rin paused. "You gave us those things, not by defeating us, by believing in us." Tiho smiled. "We believed in ourselves first. That was the hard part." The first joint expedition launched a year later. A fleet of ships crewed by both species, heading into unknown space. Nobody knew what they would find. Nobody knew if they would come back. But they went anyway, driven by the same curiosity that had led humans to the stars in the first place. Lieutenant Yi stood beside Sergeant Wu Jin on the observation deck of the flagship, watching the stars blur as they entered dimensional space. "Do you think they have really changed?" Wu Jin asked. "The veiled, 12,000 years is a long time. Old habits do not break easily." Yi considered the question. She had spent years among the veiled now. She had seen their struggles, their doubts, their slow transformation. They were not the same beings who had hidden in the shadows and watched the galaxy burn. "I think they learned the most important lesson," she said. "Which is?" Yi smiled, watching a veiled ship shimmer into formation beside their own. "Never hide from humans. We always find out, and we always say hello." The fleet vanished into the unknown, carrying two species that had once been enemies into a future neither could have imagined alone. Behind them, the galaxy continued to turn. Stars were born and died. Civilizations rose and fell. But something had changed. The Watchers were no longer watching. They were participating. They were living. They were dreaming alongside the strange young species that had found them in the dark. And somewhere in the vast depths of space, other hidden beings began to notice. Other ancient civilizations that had retreated into their own shadows. They watched the veiled emerge from 12,000 years of hiding, watched them join hands with humanity, watched them explore and build and hope. And they wondered if perhaps it was time to come out of hiding themselves. The universe was vast and full of secrets, but secrets had a way of being discovered, especially when humans were involved.